I'm Luca Giliberti, contributing writer for Gold Derby, and I'm joined today by Nelson Coates, the production designer of Apple TV Plus's The Morning Show. And you know, Nelson, when we talked about season two last year, you said that one of the themes for that season was going bigger. And I feel like that could also kind of apply to season three in large part because we get to see so much more of UBA this season. So to start things off, talk a bit about the process of going beyond TMS and really expanding the corporate culture of UBA in season three.
Yeah, I think one of the exciting things about the whole corporate culture that you see other shows, you see a lot of areas that you haven't explored before. The first two seasons, I think, focus so much on the actual show within a show, and to expand the character development. Not only are we seeing their other work environments, you're actually seeing a lot of the characters' home environments in a way that you've never seen before. And I think that's really exciting how it's expanded the show. You get to see the complexity, what's really going on in home life, and also just the interactions in a different level than you've ever seen before.
Absolutely. And I love that you mentioned the home lives because we'll get to those in just a second. But sort of a theme that I saw across, the UBA studios and the home lives is that there are a lot of dark colors in this season. I mean, if you look at even just the studios for UBA Evening News and Alex Unfiltered, it's sort of a dark color palette, which is interesting because if you think about like morning shows or talk shows or news programs, the studios are usually very bright and very light. So,
Right.
why did you opt for a darker color palette this season?
Well, in a way, the morning show itself has been bright and perky, and you're seeing that kind of underbelly of what's happening on that particular show. I wanted the evening news and Alex Unfiltered to feel more like the adult show, as opposed to the light morning, airy fluff. And to add to that gravitas, just wanted to really bring down the colors. And I talked to Mimi and Charlotte, Mimi, producing director, Charlotte, showrunner, about really richening up this season. Even the hallways in TMS got painted down and darker,
Right.
just trying to get just a little bit of an ominous feel, but also a sophistication that feels a little bit more like New York, and also the fact that UBA is trying so hard to make sure that they're staying relevant. Even with Alex Unfiltered, just playing a little bit of inside jokes where she, in the very first season, did a kind of a Broadway fundraiser. And it was like, well, she likes the theater and she's trying to be so authentic. We're going to go behind the scenes. We're going to be on stage, but behind the scenes on a theater. And then we're trying to be so truthful, yet you pull back and realize that it's an artifice. It's not even a real theater. It's a set of a backstage of a theater. And so trying to add those layers everywhere we can. The fact that the UBA Evening News Desk is askew. It's not squared on. One, that's helped Bradley when she first comes out to the Evening News Desk. It's just staring her right in the face from her dressing room.
Right.
But also, it's just that everything is a little cocked and it's a little out of whack.
Yeah, and I also think it's really interesting that, as you already mentioned, we also see that in sort of the personal spaces of these characters. I mean, if we think about Bradley, she finally has her own space this season in terms of an actual real apartment this time. And I feel like of all the characters, she's kind of had the most tumultuous journey throughout the series. So how would you say that that journey is now reflected in her new space, especially given what happens between 2020 and 2022? This time frame that we only see glimpses of, but that was really tumultuous for her. So how is all of that reflected in her new space?
Well, I actually was trying to get Bradley out of the hotel last season, but they
Yeah.
wanted to have interaction with Corey and
Right.
Bradley. And by being in the same hotel, you would run into each other more. And so that was felt to be the direction to go. And so in the expansion of season three, I've really been trying to get different neighborhoods in New York into the show, brownstones, lower Manhattan. And whether it was Tribeca or Soho, I really felt Bradley needed to have a space that was more industrial, more West Virginia throwback to that working person's kind of space. And So was looking for unusual buildings in my early scouting, and found a building that was built in 1884 that had these cool windows and was actually an old mercantile exchange floor, and
Mm,
it was kind of vacant feeling, and yet old New York rich, and the neighborhoods are at night are incredibly quiet, and it gave Bradley a way to get away from all the other characters and all the other spaces. So I thought she'd be drawn to a space like this loft that I've created for her. But also, when you see it, it's not really fully decorated. It
yeah.
feels a little vacant and empty, almost kind of like she is. She's looking for something, and yet it's voids. And it feels real more so than, let's say, Alex's penthouse, because Alex's penthouse is kind of done for show. You get the
Yeah.
sense that people are there and everything is so perfectly placed that it is important for whomever is cleaning the apartment to put each article back exactly where they found it. Whereas
Absolutely.
Bradley's just kind of lost in this big space, like she's lost in New York and kind of like she's lost in life. And I
Mhm.
wanted her to be in that void, as well as feeling some of her roots.
Yeah, I mean that makes so much sense. Again, if we even think about just this time frame, 2020 to 2022, she loses her mother, she
Yeah,
parts way with Laura. She covers up her brother's involvement in the insurrection, which we'll
yeah,
hopefully talk about a bit later. I mean, that's a lot to carry around with you. So
yeah.
it makes sense that that's sort of reflected in the vacancy, as you said, in the coldness of her new space. And I feel like Corey is sort of in the similar boat because he also has a new space. I mean, he goes from
Yes.
this luxurious hotel suite in season two to this even more luxurious house in the Hamptons in season three. And when we talked about his hotel suite last year, you said that you wanted it to be more of a high-end suite, more than like a personal space of his. And I feel like
Correct.
this house as well is sort of devoid of his personality.
Yeah.
So, why did you choose this house, or why did you land on this house for Corey? And what does it tell us about his mental state in season three?
One of the things that Corey has always been doing is trying to plant his flag, trying to prove his worth, that I am the one that should be running this thing and I'm worthy. And we figured, in that COVID space when people were trying to find where they're going to live, and a lot of people did purchase houses. A lot of my New York friends, went to upstate, got, lots of land, felt that they were going to just change and shift their life. And we
Mm,
thought that Corey would be attracted to a signature house, one that everyone would know and say, oh, you own that house. And so it was a really interesting challenge to try to find a location that we could modify that could also feel like it's back east. And I'm really excited that we found this particular location, though it's very modified
mhm.
in reality. We took off a whole story. We put it on the
Wow.
beach visually. We changed all the trees to deciduous trees, and as well as all the furnishings and things. But it was all done as if he's trying to prove. It's like he bought that house to have that upfront party. That
Mhm.
it's
Yeah.
just like,
Yeah.
oh, come here, like see what I have.
Yeah.
And yet he forgets that there really is nothing about him in this space. It's really just trying to plant my flag on a bigger scale.
I think it's so interesting that you say that because if you even think about the choice to have so much glass, to have so many windows, it almost invites people to sort of look into that space as though he sort of chose it so that he could exhibit his wealth in a way, everything
uh,
for everyone to see. And then at the same time, glass is transparent, obviously, but he
yeah.
is someone he himself is very closed off. He's very enigmatic, very mysterious. So I think that dichotomy. I don't know if that was intentional, but
Oh,
that's
yes.
certainly, yeah,
And we thought it was kind of funny that the one place he's kind of felt secure was in that hotel room. So he
yeah.
actually bought the bed from the hotel, and everybody's like, that's really odd. Some hotel chains sell their linens and their pillows and things.
Mm,
He bought the bed,
he bought, and it's sort of sad because he looks at another place first before he gets this one. And I thought the other one looked, from the outside at least, so much more inviting, but it makes so much sense for him that he goes with this one. So yeah, it all completely fits the character. And you already mentioned Alex's apartment earlier because it's different in that it's more stylish and it's more glammy. But at the same time, there's still an emptiness and a coldness to it because in that it feels very ostentatious, how you sort of, which you already mentioned before. And
And
this set.
I tried to tie in her broadcasts at the end of last season.
Mhm.
We had her doing that in the living room, but there was this beautiful desk and chair. And so we decided we needed to have a home office and make it
Mm.
look like those were pulled from that. And so we created a home office this year. And
Yep.
those elements you see is a connection.
That's interesting because I had read that you had created more space for her apartment. So was that basically the new space that you had created, or
Yes.
was there, or did you expand beyond that as well a bit?
That's predominantly the new space for this. There were some other little bits, but that's it.
That's interesting. And then, we also see her obviously in her office at UBA quite often. How would you say that her office at UBA and her apartment, how do they differ? How are they similar? Are there elements that you put in both of them, or did you want those to really be two very different spaces?
I really wanted her to feel like she'd brought part of her house to work,
Mm,
trying to
hmm.
say, here's who I am, but I really don't know who I am outside of my house. So let's bring that with me. So there are some Gregory Colbert pieces of artwork that you see like over her bed, and you see that in her dressing room at TMS, and you see
Hmm.
one of those pieces in her office, quite a large piece. And there's some color tie-ins and things, even though her office feels, pardon me, a little bit more corporate than her
Yes.
house would, and showy where she has her awards and things. But it is definitely, those are always flanking her behind, and I think that's kind of telling about her. And you have such a difference because we have Bradley's dressing room this year as well for the evening news.
Hmm.
And so I wanted to have a difference between the two. So Bradley's feels a little bit more like a real person in a way,
Absolutely.
and it's nice to have that dichotomy of those two spaces.
Absolutely. And but to stay on Bradley, there's uh, one thing that I do still want to mention, which is the Capitol,
Yeah,
because the show obviously tackles the January 6th insurrection in the fifth episode, and through Bradley really takes us into the Capitol building. So talk about, recreating some of the areas of the Capitol, and by extension, recreating this horror story that we all witnessed in real time very recently.
I love the fact that instead of continuing in straight linear fashion, we jump forward in this season, and then to catch everybody up, episode 5 is this catch up episode that you find
Mhm.
out, what all has happened in the ensuing time. And when you're designing for a series, you don't have all your scripts when you start. You don't know what's happening, and you're working as fast as you can with one director and starting to prep with another director. And you have limitations of whether you're going to travel or not. And this year we had the crazy limitations of John Hamm's schedule, and we had him in
Mm.
different pieces. So you're working this, super complex, almost a Rubik's cube behind your back to make everything happen, and which meant we could only do 1 week in New York, and the week we're in New York, we're filming in LA at the exact same time, and actors are flying back and forth, and then they drop a script on that says we're doing the insurrection. You're like, what? And I'm like, we have to figure out how to do that in LA, really? So of course, immediately knowing the Capitol well, you're having to run around trying to scout for locations that have any sort of marble and columns and elements that feel like the era of the Capitol construction. And I mean, we looked at a lot of places, but finding that scale is challenging, and finding the touch points. So my decorator and I were working on artwork and recreations of entrances to offices and things that we could get the rights to do. And finding statuary of scale is also super challenging because that immediately tells people you're in the Capitol seeing these large scale pieces. So we were shipping pieces in from all over the place, and finally it actually landed on City Hall in sections that you're not really used to seeing, but at least it gave us long throws. We had some set extension elements to create the rotunda. And it's amazing what signage does as well, you know. So I watched hours and hours of footage, and we're like, what are the things that are going to tell us that we're really there and that we're in this spot? And worked with Stacy Passon, who directed this episode, as well as Mimi, getting the feel, you know, what gets us to the essence. So I thought it was really kind of ironic that when you see Hal, crawling on the ground, he's at the feet of Thomas Jefferson and being overlooked by Abraham Lincoln. And it's like, really, you're doing this at the feet of our founding fathers, just kind of trying to play up that. And we got permission to be in several offices and dressed offices so that we could be bringing things out as if people were looting. It was kind of a somber night of filming. We were working so hard to get details right and be honest, that it actually was rather overwhelming on set that night. Surprisingly quiet in between takes, as people realized the gravitas of recreating such an important seminal event.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you really felt like you were in that building again, watching it, or at least it felt like you were in front of the television watching everything unfold again. It was, I mean, we all lived through it, and we know how horrifying that was. And to see it all over again was it was sort of horrifying, but I feel, it's in many ways it's necessary, especially for a show like this. Well,
especially putting our characters in that space.
Absolutely, 100%. Well, I fear we're out of time, Nelson, but thank you so much for walking me through your process today. Always very fascinating to listen to. And congratulations on the third season of this show.
Thank you so much. I'm very excited about it.